Okay, before we start the show this week, I wanted to touch quickly on football. Did you know that the Purdue Boilermakers just beat Iowa, and Purdue has 9 victories over the number 2 team in the country all time, which is like 5 more than everybody else?
Yeah, they beat the number 2 out of number 2. Has they so?
Well, you just ruined the joke right over here. We just beat the number 2 out of Iowa, as posted immediately by Purdue football. That is classic. Nothing can top that, but that's all the football you get tonight. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
And I'm Anthony Strait.
Welcome to the mega NHL NBA OTSL preview for 2021. Tonight, NBA locals, NHL locals, rest of each league, release the Kraken, and predictions that will make me never want to see this show ever again. Remember, I picked the Angels and Padres to make the World Series on our show. So let's not Instagram live rant like Kyrie Irving did for 20 minutes. Let's actually get to the damn point. Kyrie Irving. On the last season of As the Kyrie Irving Turns, we saw Kyrie Irving take a mysterious vacation for God knows how many games, and while taking that mysterious vacation, appear on a Zoom for a local candidate while his team was currently playing a game. We also saw him being one of the best players in the world when he played, and we saw him almost make it through an entire playoff series. This season on As the Kyrie Turns, he has hit his peak orbit, a man who's been in his own world all along. Despite vaccination mandates to be able to enjoy or even participate, which is the point of this, in New York arenas and entertainment, Kyrie has refused due to his standing up for the unfairness mandate to make a statement. In response, he would not be able to play over half his schedule, which Brooklyn Nets management rightfully said 6 days ago is not enough. So the Nets basically said Kyrie must be fully active, or he can, in terms that we can understand, kick rocks. So Anthony, you have been the most vocal critic on Kyrie's actions since 1945. What do you think in the latest plot line of this soap opera?
All right, I will say this. What Kyrie Irving does is his personal choice. I get that. I respect it. Also, I do respect what the Nets have done. Now that I've gotten the Kyrie, personal thing out the way, and he's a, great philanthropist every day. Let's get to the BS, okay? I watched that 20-minute rant, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? They're going to name a marijuana strain after Kyrie Irving at some point, because I think I was more confused at his point than anything. He went from, I'm a voice of the voiceless, to I respect people who get vaccinated, people who don't get vaccinated. I want to, I he was just all over the place. And it was so confusing and contradictory, because it's like, okay, you're not anti-vax, but here you are allegedly spreading anti-vax conspiracies among the players. That's number one. Number two, you went on a rant about how you was promised that there would be no mandates. Don't elaborate who exactly gave you that promise.
Right.
The NBA. You're part of the Players Association. You voted for no player mandates. Otherwise, Bradley Beal wouldn't have played at the Knicks preseason game that I attended Friday night. That's number one. But you play in the one city that put in a mandate among its athletes for its indoor activities from the very beginning. This was way back in early mid-August. So you had several weeks. You already knew what was going to happen, and yet I'm not surprised, because this is all part of the Kyrie Irving brand. He loves to be the center of attention, for better or for worse. I've never seen a guy who says, I don't want to be a distraction, and only thrives when he's a distraction. I've never seen it. And this is the thing, too. I actually respect his personal choice. That's his prerogative. However, you have to understand from that standpoint, Kyrie, you're not a victim, number one. You're getting paid $15 million to stay home. You are not a voice of the voiceless. You didn't give a rat's ass about healthcare workers when you were out partying at Masters last summer. That's for damn sure. And I want to know, like, how you support these people other than just bringing the attention to yourself. And I hope he's happy because now Fox News is chiming in, CNN, all the attention is on Kyrie Irving. If you're a booking that player, you want to go and strangle him right now because now the entire season narrative is going to be centered around Kyrie Irving when he's there or not. And it just, you know what? It doesn't surprise me, okay? It doesn't surprise me that a guy like Stephon Marbury will run to his support. You know, it makes me laugh how many people trip and fall over themselves to continually vouch and make up excuses for Kyrie Irving. But at the end of the day, he is who he is. Like, you could do night. I tell you all the time. Yeah, they bring him, well, he did this. He's a philanthropy. It'll be good for the WNBA. And he bought a house for George Floyd's family. Those are great things. Those are wonderful days. You can still be an asshole at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know if people realize you can have good qualities and still be a dick at the same time. I mean, I said that about Michael Jordan. And look how people tag me on social media. But that's besides the point. I just looked at it like, look, Kyrie Irving, you're not a victim. Okay, let's cut the crap. All right, you're not a voice of voices. I'm seeing Ron DeSantis and other politicians really vocal about vaccinations. So obviously, you're not a voice of voices. Or like at the end of the day, and like I said, kudos to the Brooklyn Nets for doing what they have to do. It was a business decision. Look, we're not going to pay you to be a part-time player. We're not going to let you come and go as you please. You have your way. The last time you did that, you went AWOL on us, and we didn't know where the hell you was for almost 2 weeks, other than popping up in Zoom meetings while we have a game going on. I'll just look at it like this. At what point do people just realize that for all the talent that Kyrie Irving is, he sees himself as the smartest guy in the room, and he always comes out to be the weakest, at least in my opinion. Like, the smartest guy in the room is the weakest, who tried too hard. It's obviously the weakest guy in the room. Because obviously, the Nets don't need him. Have you seen that lineup? They got a deep team without Kyrie Irving. He's literally the fattening frosting on a cake you probably shouldn't be eating anyway. But
hold on.
You know what?
Before we go any further.
Keep going. We're not going to have much of a show.
Before we go any further, I will say this. I think the rest of the players are actually, there's so much pressure on the Nets this season, and we'll get to that in the next segment, that actually having this distraction might help them actually focus on the court. Because now it's not about what happened in Game 7 last year. It's not about Joe Harris's shooting. It's about, what do you think about Kyrie Irving? I think outside of David Letterman asking Kevin Durant questions during media day, I think this has probably been the least Durant has been heckled about his own game. Jay, what are your thoughts on Kyrie?
All right. It's as Anthony said, it's no surprise to any of us that Kyrie's not going to get vaccinated. He's not vaccinated. Come on. This is a guy who for the longest term was adamant that the earth was flat. Okay.
I think he still believes that. I don't think
he walked it back, but who knows? I wish I could say with any degree of certainty that Irving will follow the path of Warriors wing Andrew Wiggins, who was the next to last big holdout, but finally decided that losing 41 games worth of salary wasn't worth whatever was behind his I will not get the vaccine stance, but I can't. No one can. Anyone who says they know exactly what Kyrie will do has been smoking that brand of marijuana that Anthony says will be named after him at some point in Brooklyn. I do think the Nets did the right thing. I agree with Anthony on that. Not allowing Kyrie to be a part-time player. Like, not having his services for 41 games at Barclays Center, 2 games at Madison Square Garden, and the 1 trip the Nets will make to the city by the Bay to take on Steph Curry and the Warriors works out to 44 games he can't play. Basketball teams need to build chemistry, and that works best when everyone knows their role each game. Essentially, having 2 different teams, one with Kyrie and one without, does not serve the best interests of the team and its goals. General manager Sean Marks made the decision, but after hearing the interview that Nets owner Joe Tsai did with The Athletic and his very emphatic stance on people needing to get the vaccine and on everyone on the team being on the same page and rowing the boat in the same direction in pursuit of an NBA title. And then the owner had what I would guess was a very pointed conversation with his GM. Marks made all this clear in a statement last week that the decision was made by both him and Tsai. And here's the quote. Given the evolving nature of the situation and after thorough deliberation, we have decided that Kyrie Irving will not play or practice with the team until he is eligible to be a full participant. Kyrie has made a personal choice, and we respect his individual right to choose. Currently, the choice restricts his ability to be a full-time member of the team, and we will not permit any member of our team to participate with part-time availability, end quote. Now, look, we've talked often on this show about the type of unguardable talent that Kyrie can be on the floor and that he's done some really great work in the community. But when he takes a stance like this, that seems selfish when compared to the goals of his team and paints him as the one player seemingly rowing in the opposite direction, this is the brush he gets painted with by us, by the mainstream media, by social media, and by other players around the league, even if they don't come out and actually say the words. There's a quote from Tsai's interview, which he did with Alex Schiffer, who's the Nets beat writer for The Athletic, that while not directed specifically at Irving, could very much be interpreted that way. Here's the quote. The other thing I want people to understand is I take the vaccine. I'm protecting myself, but I'm also protecting people around me. I protect my family. I protect meeting with people. I protect everybody else. It's part of social responsibility when you think about it to do the socially responsible thing. I know that there's just so many scenarios where there's a conflict between personal choice and what is good for the greater goal, end quote. Look, I understand Kyrie believes he's fighting for something bigger than basketball. He's upset that people are losing their jobs due to vaccine mandates, and he's challenging what he perceives as control of society and people's livelihoods, according to sources with knowledge of his mindset. Those same sources say it's a decision that he believes he's fully capable of making given his current life dynamic. He wants to be a voice for the voiceless, as Anthony said, according to those same sources. But here's the thing, guys. The consequences of that fight is causing a conflict with his job and his team, especially in a city where there are, consequences for being unvaccinated. Kyrie's decision makes me shake my head like I have in the past with some of his other stances, but I'm not surprised. No one should be. This is typical Kyrie, man.
Well, here's the one thing. First of all, if you're a voice of the voiceless, why did it take you almost until last week to actually state your stance? And instead of actually stating it in a press conference, you ran to Shams Charania of The Athletic to basically talk to him, and then you made an Instagram live video after that. You're not the voice of the voiceless when that happens. I'm just letting you know that usually those two things don't go together by definition. Number
He's not CM Punk. That's obvious.
Yes, exactly. Number two, there are other unvaccinated players in the league. Unfortunately, Kyrie just happens to be in one of those mandated states, like Bradley Beal, who said, I had COVID. It doesn't make any sense. Jonathan Isaac has said the same thing. Michael Porter Jr., who's had COVID twice, has said the same thing too. Those players should be criticized just as much, and they're not, because they're going to be playing a full 82-game schedule. Even when they go, by the way, when they go to Golden State, they're not banned from playing because of the rules of being a visitor to the area. And I don't know why I've learned that rule over the last few days, but I have. But overall, I think this area, here's the one thing that's going to be funny. Kyrie is coming back this season. I am telling you right now, 100% certain that Kyrie is coming back this season. The most hilarious thing will be when Kyrie explains why he actually came back. Is he doing this for a stand, or is he doing this for himself? I think it's the second. So if the Nets start the season 15-13 or something, he can come back and be on a freaking cape and say, hey guys, I'm back. Or when the Nets start the season 29-3, he can come on the cape and say, hey guys, I'm back in the lineup. So Kyrie is a soap opera who apparently became the vice president of the Players Association at some time during this whole entire thing. I don't know what marijuana strain of Kyrie people were taking before that decision was made. It even came to the point that Adam Silver had to actually talk about this in his press conferences today before the NBA season. Why? Just why? Kyrie needs to go away and go away fast. Okay. And this topic needs to go away fast. We'll talk about it again. Moving on. Alex, I'll take people who can win a championship for 500, please. The answer is the Brooklyn Nets, the team who is now all been vaxxed, are looking to take the experience of their second round Game 7 loss to the now defending champion Milwaukee Bucks and magically turn it into a Larry O'Brien trophy. The Nets, despite having the NBA's requisite lack of crazy on their team, are still the betting favorites to win the NBA title. We're going to talk about a bunch of things: returning player, new player, and coaching philosophy. Anthony's got the returning player. Anthony, give me a returning player that will be in the spotlight for the Brooklyn Nets in 2021-22.
Well, it's got to be James Harden. And I just remember last year, James Harden was kind of the malcontent in the locker room. He requested to be traded from Houston. He showed up completely out of shape the first couple of weeks of the season, and there was issues with him and DeMarcus Cousins, and it finally shipped him off to Brooklyn when he ended up making an all-star team for the ninth time in his career as a reserve. Missed 18 games though due to the hamstring injury. Came back to the playoffs, and the hamstring again hitting them in that second round series against Milwaukee. And you make the argument that even without a healthy Kyrie, maybe a healthy James Harden be all the difference, and we don't see the Kevin Durant one-man show towards the 10 in that series. But here's the thing too, and I was looking up some statistics. There was a limited sample of Kevin Durant and James Harden together with Kyrie Irving not on the court. And they managed, and the Nets still managed to score 130.5 points a game per 100 possessions. And they beaten opponents to the tune of an average of 20.7 points per game per 100 possessions. James Harden, keep in mind, he's now in a very point guard friendly system with Steve Nash, almost identical to the role he played with Mike D'Antoni in Houston, where he pretty much facilitated the offense. He ran the offense for the rest of the team in Houston. He averaged 40.2 points and 16 assists per 100 possessions in 616 minutes when he was on a court without Kyrie Irving. Now you look at the Nets lineup; they're pretty much a deep team that can compensate for a guy like Kyrie not being in the lineup. But James Harden, which is the irony is that Kyrie's disappearing at last year is what pretty much brought James Harden to Brooklyn and facilitated that trade. I think, and right now it's looming larger and larger when you think of James Harden being able to play the point forward and being able to allow Kevin Durant to play off the ball and off a lot more. But health is going to be a key thing. Obviously, last year was really the first time he had problems with injuries and again, the aforementioned hamstring being a problem. If he can stay healthy with the lineup, with the supporting cast that they have, the Nets have more than enough to get out of the Eastern Conference. But again, James Harden's health, if he's can at least play at least 75 to 80 games this year and not have any re-injuries with the hamstring or anything else, it should be definitely a boost for Brooklyn. Also, he's motivated by the fact that he does not have a ring up the Brooklyn Nets trio. Kevin Durant has 2. Kyrie has 1 from Cleveland. James Harden is the only one who does not have a ring. So maybe that extra motivation would be just enough to take him to that next level that we kind of been waiting for throughout his career, particularly in the postseason.
We never actually really saw a Durant Harden only combination last year, because when Irving was not with the team, it was before, when he went on that sabbatical, it was before Harden got traded to the team. So we've never seen those two together without Irving, and it'll be kind of interesting, at least for the first 20 or 30 games of the season, to see that, because that's what I think we'll end up seeing. All right, so I'm going to have the new player coming to the Nets that'll make an impact. And they have a lot of new players. This is now the new Lakers, essentially, of younger players actually trying to win a title. Like, Paul Millsap came to this team for absolutely nothing. Blake Griffin decided, I'm coming back for absolutely nothing. And a guy who is on a 2-year deal, I believe, for like $10 million on this team is Patty Mills, a guy who has spent his entire career in San Antonio under the Greg Popovich system. And now, with the backcourt being in a little bit of flux, and you're going to need to spread out Kyrie Irving's minutes, you have a 33-year-old veteran who is a double-digit scorer and shoots almost 40% from deep. And of course, he played for the Summer Olympics in Australia this year, 23.3 points per game, 6.3 assists. And you have championship experience. You have very rare situations, like, sure, Durant has championship experience, but he wasn't the starter of the team. You have a role player in Patty Mills who knows exactly what he can do, who knows exactly, he'll be open as much as Joe Harris was open last year, Anthony. And I know you had the quote that we've said a lot on this show. If I was left that open, I should be making 40 to 50% of my shots. You're talking about a guy who makes 37.5% of his shots already. Yes, he's not a spring chicken anymore, but for God's sakes, leave this guy open. And good Lord, this guy might flourish. I expect him to be a 20 to 25 minute per game player on the court. And I see that even if Kyrie Irving does come back, because I have a feeling one of the reasons why the Nets loaded up this offseason is to kind of make sure when injuries happen, they have the requisite amount of guys to play the game, and it doesn't become Harden and the Hardettes or Durant and the Durantettes. And I think Patty Mills is such a good signing that, again, good teams can make when you are a championship contender, that it's going to really help this whole organization. All right, Jay, you're going to be Steve Nash for a second. That would be just about 15 years younger. And I want you to tell me what the coaching philosophy that he needs to adjust from last season to this season needs to be.
Well, I mean, it's real simple. It's one of your basics. He's got to improve the defense and the rebounding. The Nets were 14th in rebounds per game, at a little over 44 per game, 27th in offensive rebounding. They were 5th in defensive rebounding, but they allowed opponents to score 114 points per game. That was 21st in the NBA. Their defensive rating was 23rd at 113.8. I mean, we talked ad nauseum about the amount of points the Nets put up on offense, but we also talked about how they struggled to get stops on defense and struggled on the glass. GM Sean Marks made several moves, both with the draft and the offseason, to try and remedy those issues. First move was retaining Bruce Brown, who is one of the NBA's better on-ball defenders, followed by the additions of Javon Carter, James Johnson, and the aforementioned Patty Mills, along with DeAndre Bembry. All can help with perimeter defense. According to Synergy Stats, Carter graded out as an excellent defender this past season, proven to be especially effective against the pick and roll, spot up shooters, and off screens. Carter's lone struggle on defense is in isolation. But since Brooklyn plays a switch everything defense, it might be able to protect him from the one-on-one matchups that seem to cause him strife. Bembry looked at the Nets, at the Nets, and defense as his ticket to carving out a role in the rotation. He played for Atlanta and Toronto, and he ranked in the 86th percentile last season, an estimated defensive plus minus at 1.3, according to Dunks and Threes, a basketball analytics site. His 6'9" wingspan makes him switchable on the perimeter, so it plays his style and his assets and his tools play right into the type of defensive philosophy that Nash espouses. In the front court, the additions of Paul Millsap and LaMarcus Aldridge and the drafting of Day'Ron Sharpe paired with Blake Griffin, who was tied for the league with 22 charges drawn last year, despite missing roughly a month while Detroit negotiated his buyout. Nick Claxton, who had the best defensive rating of any Nets rotation player in the regular season at 102.1. And Brooklyn's defensive rating of 101 when Claxton was on the floor would have led the league by a wide margin. Claxton really moves well for his size at 6'11". He's got great footwork and instincts to contest on mismatches. But health has been a problem for him his first 2 years and will be key to this. You of course, they have Kevin Durant, who can be a solid interior defender, as well as a decent rebounder. Paul Millsap, 7.2 boards per game for his career. He brings defensive toughness, switchability, rebounding, and experience to a team that can always use defenders. His defensive rating last season was a career high 111.5, but prior to that, it did hover around 105 throughout the bulk of his career. He's extremely switchable, and he gives Nash a lot of options with his lineup. Nash can play Millsap, Claxton, James, or Elias Johnson or Griffin as either forwards or centers, and he can elect to play one of them in a lineup where Durant is the de facto center. Millsap brings defense. His defense. Here's the other thing. He should be a decent replacement for the departed Jeff Green. Aldridge, 8.1 boards per game for his career. He's an effective rebounder in his short stint with the Nets last year before retiring due to a heart condition. He was medically cleared to play again, and coming back to the Nets gives them more veteran front court depth. He and Millsap have played well in limited minutes in the preseason. Sharp averaged 7.6 rebounds per game and only 19.2 minutes per game last season at North Carolina. He's probably going to spend a lot of time in Long Island this season, but his development with the Nets will be something to follow. Mark said on draft night he'd like to make Sharp a floor spacer, a skill he has, but hasn't really needed since high school when he was the Pied Piper of his AAU team. Sharp has shown an impressive level of physicality in the summer league. He's going to get to learn from Aldridge, Millsap, Griffin, three stretch forwards who are multi-time All-Stars. It's a nice classroom to have. During his first preseason as Nets coach, Nash said the goal was for the defense to get better over the course of the season to get to a place where Brooklyn could go in and out multiple defenses over the course of a game. Attrition had other plans. We know how many games the Nets lost to injury last year. That with the revolving door of personnel, Nash never got enough time to get a full roster together to kind of implement the defense he really wanted to play. So instead, he pivoted to the switch everything defense that Mike D'Antoni ran in Houston. The question is, does he stick with his original vision or keep D'Antoni's or completely change course? He has two new assistants, Brian Keefe and David Vanterpool, who come in with defensive backgrounds and have different visions for Brooklyn's D. In 2016, Keefe's first with the Lakers. He helped take LA's defense from 30th in the NBA to 12th. Brooklyn was 22nd last year, but fourth among playoff teams, which showed the gear the Nets can hit when they need to. As I said, Nash has more switchability on the roster, fewer liabilities. Mills, Carter, Brown, and Harris are all capable defenders. Claxton, Griffin, Millsap, Johnson are reliable options in the front court. And Claxton was one of the team's best defenders last season, as we noted. Granted, look, the front court veterans problems for half a decade. Aldridge, as I said, retired last year, and the 36-year-old Millsap hasn't topped 70 games since 2016. The Nets are well aware of this, of course, and will surely load manage themselves during the regular season. That said, the amount of offense
All right, guys, we are going to move on now to the Knicks. Oh, yes. Love it. Love it. All right. So we mentioned the C word for the Nets, and that was championship. Time for another C word for the Knicks. Confidence. They need some confidence to match their fourth place finish from a season ago in the East. They need confidence to do better in a playoff series after the Atlanta Hawks kind of handily beat them in 5. And they need confidence that the goddamn Yankees won't be a higher priority in this town in April. Let's see some real playoffs in the Garden. Guys, say 3 questions. Anthony, give me a returning player to watch, and let's go with the Captain Obvious pick.
Yeah, the Captain Obvious is the guy that I watched at a buzzer beater last Friday night. And it's Julius Randle. I mean, Julius Randle is coming off a career season when he made the All-Star team for the first time. Averaged 24 points a game, 10.6 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. NBA Most Improved Player of the Year award winner, led the Knicks to a 41-31 record, and a first playoff appearance since 2013. And then the playoffs came around, and everything just nosedived. And Julius Randle said that he overthought it. He overthought the situation, wherever it was. His numbers dipped. He shot the ball poorly. His average shrunk down to 18 and 11, and his splits was basically he barely shot 30% for this series. What that says is that the Knicks unfortunately relied too much on him offensively, not just to score but to be a playmaker, which is not his forte. Henson and obviously Rabbi, you'll talk about this guy in a few minutes, which is Kemba Walker, but Evan Fournier as well, being brought into the fold to kind of take some of the pressure, the playmaking pressure off Julius Randle. That way it allows him to play a little more off the ball, try to get him some easier shots. Because obviously what the Atlanta Hawks did was pretty much what every other team was starting to do late in the year, was I load up on Randle and obviously force him to make a decision. What he's going to have to do this season is purely simple, and that's make quicker decisions when the ball's in his hands. Obviously, even with Kemba Walker and 48 on the court, he is the next best player, and he's going to get a lot of defensive attention. So Randle's going to have to figure out a way going to have to be a little quicker with his decisions. Obviously, it's a big turnaround for Randle. I think that's just the key thing. I mean, you think about 2 years ago, fans are booing him at the free throw line, and nowadays when he's at the free throw line late in the game, the Knicks are winning or a chance to win, you have an MVP chance. So he has done a phenomenal job with his work ethic and just continuing to improve year in and year out, and winning the Knicks fans over. But now it's the next step, and that is he's going to have to elevate his game come postseason if the Knicks are going to take that next level as far as being a team that can eventually contend and perhaps win a playoff series.
I will say this, by the way. Kemba Walker played 2,660. Julius Randle played 2,667 minutes last year. By far number one in the league in minutes. And just to show who Tom Thibodeau kind of is as a coach, guess who was number two? RJ Barrett.
RJ Barrett, yeah.
Well, that's right.
11. So I
made the joke with you on Friday night that Tibbs in the final preseason game going to have these guys playing 40 minutes a night, 40 minutes, and Julius Randle played 37, so it's close.
I will say this, and I will quickly go right back to what we're talking about in a second. The team has a new identity under Tibbs, and I don't think anyone thought Tibbs would make this much of an impact in season one. And the way you see them in preseason so far, season two doesn't look to be too much different. Okay. Kemba Walker is a pretty obvious choice for the new star to look at. They got him for basically nothing from Oklahoma City. I think when Brad Stevens became the general manager of Boston, I think his mission one was to find a way to get rid of Kemba Walker at all costs, even if it meant for Al Horford to be back on the team. So he did that. And then Oklahoma City, because they really aren't trying to win, let's be obvious, got rid of Kemba Walker right away and gave him to the Knicks for basically a bag of peanuts. I think there were a couple of draft picks in there. But Kemba is going to play the point guard position. Derrick Rose has basically said that's his spot. And he's had great moments in the Garden before. Obviously, the Big East tournament over 10 years ago now, when he got the name Cardiac Kemba, got them to an NCAA title in the end. He's been in the league for 8 years. He only played 43 games last year, and a lot of people were like, when's Kemba Walker ever going to play a back-to-back? I think that's been a question a lot of people have also asked of Kemba this season. He should be playing back-to-back, and if the Knicks can get, and I know Anthony just said 75 games for Harden, I think that's almost impossible in this NBA load management day. So I would say you get a good 60 to 65 games out of Kemba Walker. That's already a success. And if you can get a good point guard position, and if you can get a secondary scorer who can just be a 2A or a 1B squared, because I think RJ Barrett does need to be the secondary scorer on this team. And if you can get Kemba Walker open shots, he can become a 15 to 20 point player point per game player. He's not going to be Charlotte Kemba. I unfortunately think even 31 years old, with the amount of mileage on Kemba Walker, that's not happening again. But if he can get somewhere to where his Boston peak was, and there was a time right when he came to Boston where he was dominating with that team, the Knicks could be a very, very different team, because whatever Kemba does will allow Derrick Rose to load manage. And Derrick Rose was a very good candidate for sixth man of the year last year. Non-Utah division, he finished first. But I think what Kemba needs to do is to make sure that position is his and allow Derrick Rose to have a 20 to 25 minute per game presence in the lineup instead of what ended up in the end, which was a 37 to 38 minute per game lineup, because nobody wanted to see Elfrid Payton start a playoff game. And that's exactly what happened. So that's the most important position on this team, no doubt about it. Now, Jay, yes, they called you the czar in college, if I recall correctly. So that's why we're giving you the coaching philosophy again this time for the Nets.
Wow. And Rabbi, as you'll recall, when we previewed the Nets playoff series, I said on the show that if Derrick Rose has to play 36 minutes a game, the Knicks are in trouble. Turned out I was unfortunately correct. What does Tibbs have to do this year differently than he did last year? To me, it's a basic thing, especially in this league. Got to increase the threes and the frees per game. You talk about the Knicks. They shot 39.2% on threes on 30 attempts per game. By percentage, that was number 3 in the league. By attempts, it's 27th. We're in the age of analytics, guys. Elite offenses maximize layups, dunks, and free throws, and long balls, right? The Knicks are one of the teams most accurate. As we said, the Knicks are one of the league's most accurate teams beyond the arc, but only 35% of their shots came from deep, and that was 24th in the NBA. And they were very much smack dab in the middle of the pack and drawing fouls. The go-to statistical storyline of the preseason has been the number of three-pointers the Nets have been jacking up. A season after falling to the bottom of the league beyond the arc in attempts, as we've noted, the Knicks have taken over 40 triples per game during the preseason, and it is very much a conscious adjustment by the guys. Before Knicks training camp even began, Derrick Rose had a goal: more threes, please. Rose reminded a group of reporters at the team's media day that New York hoisted only 30 per game last season, which, as I said, was 27th in the NBA. Now he said they wanted to raise that number to 37 to 40 per game. Tibbs has led the initiative. They were prioritizing, getting organically working the ball to get more threes out of the offensive scheme. Here's the thing. We talk about the loss of Reggie Bullock. His 41% on the threes on 6 attempts per game. He would have thrived under this, more threes per game offense. He was essentially replaced by Evan Fournier, who, pretty much a similar guy, shot 41.3% on 6.7 attempts per game. We're hoping that he'll fill that offensive role and, potentially increase his scoring with the green light to put up even more threes per game. Here's the other thing. I talked about the freebies. The Knicks finished 17th in free throw rate, which measures how often a team gets to the line. Failing to chuck a bunch of threes despite their strong percentage wasn't the only offensive issue last season. The Knicks don't force freebies either, as the saying goes. The free throw rate came in at 24%. That's just below the league median. 22nd in points per possession. Fournier, who has the ability to, get to the line as well as score from deep, replacing Bullock would help. Bullock attempted only 71 free throws during his 2 seasons in New York. Fournier could top that number, in the first 15 to 20 games. But it's not like he's some free throw glutton either. His career free throw rate is the same 24% as the rest of the Knicks. The other big acquisition, Kemba Walker, which you talked about, Rabbi, he has not been getting to the line with any regularity and probably since UConn. So, we talk about RJ Barrett, right? Here's a guy who has the potential to, give the Knicks a boost in both areas. Would we like to see him start getting whacked a little more around the paint? Sure. Would we like to see Julius Randle less reliant on the mid-range jump shot? This is a guy who could draw 10 draw 10 trips to the line on any given night. The big men just aren't major free throw guys, and neither are any of the guards on the bench unit. So, it does kind of fall a little bit on Barrett. Improving on threes and getting more to the line is kind of what I think he needs to focus on. Yeah, he hit 40% of his threes last year, but he only took about 4 attempts per game. He's got to be more consistent with that. He's got to increase that sample size. He did improve as a spot up shooter. So the next thing is, improving off the dribble. 288 catch and shoot threes last season, just 20 pull-up threes and hit just 6. And I've talked about this on the show more than once about Barrett needing to improve as a finisher at the rim. And if he can improve that, he will convert more and once he will also get more trips to the line. So, I'd like to see some obvious improvement in those areas. If he's taking 6+3 a game and still draining the appropriate percentage and he's getting to the line more, then he will become the Robin to Randall's Batman that we're kind of hoping, that he'll turn out to be. Here's the thing about the Knicks last season, guys. They were actually, numbers aside, they were actually good offensively. 17th best offense from the moment Derrick Rose got to New York, and they were 13th in offensive rating from April 1 through the end of the season. And they were third in 3-point percentage. We talked about this, third in threes for the whole season. The Knicks suffered from a lack of playmaking and individual scoring, even after acquiring Rose at midseason. 29th in 2-point shooting percentage, 49%, and the issue of generating the threes. So here's the quote from Tibbs. If we can get the mix of the pick and roll game, the transition game, and playing off the path, we get downhill that way. And once we get downhill, the quality of the shots will go up significantly. If Tibbs gets the quality of shots he's looking for, if the team keeps their 3-point percentage despite the increase in attempts, and they get to the line just a little bit more and get some more freebies out of those trips, guys, this could actually become an offense that doesn't have to rely on its defense to win games.
I've said this before with the Knicks. They didn't do anything really well last year, but they did a little bit of everything, which you hadn't really seen out of a Knicks team in quite some time. And if judging by the bepreseason, which was, yes, the preseason, but an undefeated preseason, which scares the bejesus out of me, because those teams, I know, but that means that they could be even worse. This team at least has some humming from last year, but the problem is the East is a ton better.
Here's the thing, Rabbi. I mean, look, they have a chance. Look, they were the 4th seed, and if Fournier can, be counted on to knock, if Fournier, we can count on him from anywhere from 16 to 20 every night. If Kemba and Derek give us, combined 20 and 8 and a two-headed, point guard over 48 minutes, you add in the growth of quickly, and some of these other guys, and you never know. They can make some more.
We'll see. All right, moving on. Then there's everyone else, because we like to spread the wealth. The NBA season begins tomorrow night, and we're going to take a look at a team to look at in the East and the West. The Bucks are the defending champs in the East, and the Suns are the defending champs in the West. And the fact that neither of these teams are mentioned in this segment can tell you what the NBA probably actually thought of that matchup in the finals.
Because they're not.
It's what they thought. It's what they thought. I know. That's why I put it in the opening. Anthony, give me a team to watch in the East and a team to watch in the West. You'll give both of the comments on your segment. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the West. And it's a team that I've kind of openly spoke about on this show, but you know what? They got to the first conference finals in franchise history. That's the Clippers. Now, here's the problem. They're kind of in a holding pattern among the teams that you think will contend, because they don't know when they're going to have Kawhi Leonard back from obviously knee injury and offseason surgery. They don't know if he'll be back at any point this season, if at all this year, which is now going to fall onto the shoulders of Paul George. And if you're the Clippers, you'll hope he refer back to OKC, Indiana Paul George, who was an MVP candidate just a few years ago when he was averaging close to 30 points a game. Now, you think about this, playoff P, as he calls himself, played admirably well, and getting the Clippers to the conference finals after Kawhi went down in the second round series against Utah. And you look at the rest of the team, they brought back Reggie Jackson, obviously, was a big part of that, Marcus Morris. And a guy that they added was Eric Bledsoe. And Bledsoe's kind of like, he was the guy that, left, that was kind of ran out of Milwaukee and kind of bounced around.
Rightfully so, by the way. Yeah. He had no defensive ability whatsoever.
And kind of, bounced around the league a little bit. And they're gonna need to rely on him with Leonard being out of the lineup. And you look at another guy, Nicholas Batum, and some of these other vets they brought back. And I got to give credit to Ty Lue, because he did the coaching job he did last year after Kawhi went down, as far as being able to adjust his lineup to a particular opponent. Was part of the reason why they were able to get to the conference finals and why they were able to push the eventual conference champion Suns to at least 6 games. despite the fact that they were a bit at a disadvantage. So that's a team I would be interested in to see just how far they can go in a very loaded Western Conference. As far as the East, we're talking about the team that knocked the Knicks out of the playoffs last year, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. And really the first bona fide superstar since the days of Dominique Wilkins. And we're talking about what the New York's hated nemesis, Trae Young. Now, Trae Young, he is an all-star. He obviously enjoys the spotlight and averaged 28 points a game in the playoffs, including a couple of 40 and 50-point games too to boot. But there were two things that the Atlanta Hawks did, obviously. Making Nate McMillan the full-time head coach was one of them. We look at the Hawks from the moment he took over in early March till the run to the conference finals. Nate McMillan, obviously, coach of the year candidate for what he did, but also bringing back Clint Capella and John Collins was also a vital part to the Atlanta Hawks turnaround last season, particularly on the defensive end. Clint Capella, double guy who can get blocks, rebound, and also a big defensive presence. And John Collins, pretty much a good young player who can finish around the basket. So those were very key things. And you also bring back guys like Gallinari, Cam Reddish is another person they're bringing back. Kevin Huber and Lou Williams. Sweet Lou, Lemon Pepper Lou was back for another season. Keep in mind, he was going to retire when he got traded to Atlanta. And I look how great that turned out for him. But here's a key stat, though, and why John Collins and Clint Capella was so important in being brought back. Trae Young has led the league in assists, 160 on dunks in each of his first 3 seasons in the league. 34 more than any other player, and 125. Let's see, only player. Well, he's 125 total assists to multiple teammates. 141 of those assists went to John Collins. 136 went to Clint Capella. So as much as Trae Young is as a scorer, his ability to facilitate and to give guys and the way the Hawks built the team around him, as far as not just shooters but guys who can finish around the basket, is why the Atlanta Hawks are so dangerous in the playoffs, particularly on offense. If Trae Young can get that same level on the defensive end, then the Atlanta Hawks, they go from a team that was a 5 seed that got to a conference finals to a team that could definitely push for one of the top 3 spots in the East.
It's interesting, though. I'm going to counter you for saying this, and I do actually think the Hawks take a step back this year for 2 reasons. Number one, Trae is who Trae is, and there's a reason why this team is an underachieving team. Yes, I know they're deep, but I can see a lot of steps back. And number 2, they're going to be tired because of that conference finals run. They don't have a lot of time between the start of the season and when they're going to start this season. It's literally only 2.5 to 3 months. So if they start slow, don't be surprised. I'm putting a warning right here now. There might be Ben Simmons talk in this next angle. If you don't want to hear about Ben Simmons like anybody else does, wait 5 minutes, come back, and you'll hear something about the Lakers. So, Jay, with that being said, go ahead.
Well, nice lead in, a little bit of a spoiler there, but yes, the 2 most intriguing teams for me, one from each conference, are the Sixers and the Lakers. I mean, we all know what happened with the Sixers in the regular season last year. 49 wins, 1 seed in the East, MVP caliber season from Joel Embiid. We also know how it ended in the second round against the aforementioned Atlanta Hawks, blowing huge leads and giving away games they should have salted away, culminating in the pass in the Game 7 loss, and the ensuing offseason of discontent, highlighted or low-lighted, if you will, by comments made by Embiid and Doc Rivers about Ben Simmons' play, or lack thereof, in the offensive end, followed by his holdout and summer spent pouting and keeping teammates in the organization at arm's length, while trade offers were batted around by the local and national media. None of which came to fruition prior to camp and the preseason getting underway. Simmons has returned to the team, but how amends are made on all sides in the locker room and what kind of effort we see from Simmons will go a long way to determining if this team will compete for a title or implode until and unless Simmons is traded. Simmons has joined the team, as I said, but as to whether he starts or even plays opening night is still very much TBD. According to Doc Rivers, he's in shape, but not necessarily game shape. Other than draft picks, not likely to really crack the rotation, Philly just made additions to the bench. They essentially signed George Niang and Andre Drummond to replace Mike Scott and Dwight Howard, figuring that if Simmons came back and played at his usual level, that running it back with players who got the bulk of the minutes last season would be enough. I talked last season, and I won't bore you with the numbers again, about just how highly rated that Sixers starting five was as an offensive unit. Tyrese Maxey seems ready to take a leap in his development. The Sixers had him starting at point guard during the preseason before they knew that Simmons was officially coming back, and the kid acquitted himself quite well. We all know what Embiid, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, and Danny Green bring to the table. Green being hurt last year in the series against Atlanta definitely was a negative for the Sixers. So the big question is Simmons. Will he be a Sixer for the entire season? Will he and the team mend fences? Will he bring the type of effort we've come to expect from him? Will the hesitancy on offense we saw in the Hawks series carry over into the season? Will trade talk loom over the team like a cloud? Will all of this drama, real or media created, distract this team to the point that they won't play to their expectations? Who knows? But all of it is why the Sixers are my intriguing team in the West. Now, for the Lakers. Last season did not go as intended for the champs of the NBA bubble due to injuries to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which cost the team their services for a combined 53 games. Either Dennis Schrader or Montrezl Harrell were the Fitz GM Rob Pelinka or head coach Frank Vogel thought they'd be, which is why both are gone. And in steps Russell Westbrook on his fourth team in 3 years. Now, how Westbrook fits with James, Davis, and the rest of the team will dictate how far this team can go. There's still a lack of clarity regarding how the offense is going to be divided between James and Westbrook, as well as what Westbrook specifically will do when the ball isn't in his hands, according to multiple sources around the team. Look, Westbrook is one of the best scorers this game has ever seen. He's one hell of a playmaker. On paper, with the numbers he's capable of putting up, he gives the Lakers a true third star. Now, the Lakers should be able to get into the paint and out in transition more than they did last season because of Westbrook demands a human fast break. Is he prone to taking ill-advised shots? Yes. Does he throw the ball away trying to make passes that shouldn't be made? Yes. Is he lacking in defensive effort on occasion? Yes. But as flawed as he is still an elite difference maker, and the Lakers were lacking in that regard last season. Now, the big question is, was trading Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Harrell, plus the 22nd pick and 3 future second rounders to get Westbrook from Washington worth it? We'll see. But adding Westbrook along with veterans like Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza, Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, and DeAndre Jordan, and bringing back Rajon Rondo and Dwight Howard for another go-around makes the Lakers one of the oldest teams in the association. These guys are all role players brought in to provide shooting, defense, and interior muscle around James, Davis, and Westbrook. But it all comes down to how the three starters play together, especially in the postseason, where you'd expect them to share more time on the floor than they would during the regular season, where Vogel can stagger their minutes. Now, I can see Westbrook leading the bench units and improving the non-LeBron minutes that have been an issue for this team in the past. That being said, just remember that Westbrook is not a great shooter. He's 30.5% from three for his career. He has never topped 35% in any season. So his defender will cheat off him when Westbrook does not have the ball and will dare him to launch from beyond the arc when he does. And on defense, Westbrook has a tendency to wander and ball watch, and thus he's frequently out of position. We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly from him in the preseason. Whether or not the Lakers can find a way for Westbrook to fit with James Davis and the rest of the players on both ends of the floor is why they're my intriguing team in the West.
2 comments. Number 1, Ben Simmons and that little stunt that he pulled to try to get himself traded out. I think Rich Paul was too busy to promote his girlfriend's new 30 album, which is coming out soon. Obviously, if you didn't know, Rich Paul and Adele are an item. So that's kind of why Ben Simmons was just not ready. And I'm very curious if there's any player in the league that actually needs the mandate to not play at home this season, it's Ben Simmons. So that'll be very interesting to see. Also,
Yeah.
the Los Angeles Lakers are a great team to win the title in 2014. That's all I'm going to say right now. That's not a joke that hasn't been made before, but they are a great 2014 championship contender. Okay. The team that I'm picking, and again, this is a segment that basically says intriguing team, not a team that you think will win the East, but I have to go with the team that won the offseason, kind of like how the Atlanta Hawks won the offseason last year and eventually got themselves to where they are. The Chicago Bulls kind of won the offseason just with the moves that they made. Zach Levine is still not made the playoffs, but he is probably one of the best young players out there. He is essentially, he was a 51, 42, 85 guy last year. But one of the reasons why Levine wasn't what he was is because he didn't have a supporting cast. Now he's got it. Lonzo Ball had a career high usage rate of 20.5% last season, to the point where he might be a tad underrated now, even though he was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft way not too long ago. But he did very well for a, let's just say it, shitty New Orleans Pelicans team last year under Stan Van Gundy. So the chances are Lonzo's going to play at the same level. DeMar DeRozan is now with this team. DeRozan is in his 13th season, and his defense is none. And Nikolai Vucevic, I know he was in the team last season, midseason, and it cost this team a first-round pick. But now you get a full season of him, and that will help the shooting of this team. Then you have Derrick Jones. Then you have Troy Brown. Then you have Kobe White and that bench. And then, of course, you have who me and Anthony have affectionately called the GOAT at many a times, and that's Alex Caruso, who's played with the Los Angeles Lakers, especially in the championship season 2 years ago. Cannot be understated. He has clutch defense. He has negative plus minus, and he is not the greatest offensive player in the world, and you cringe every single time he takes a three. But the fact that he can lead the first unit, be used as a bench unit second player leader, is a big help for a team that was not really deep. And the Chicago Bulls, they're going all in for a 4th or 5th spot. Let's be fair. They're not a top team in the East. No way, no how, in my opinion. But you're going to want to see them on television. You are going to want to see this team. They are going to provide highlights for you. So that's why they're most intriguing in the East. All right. In the West, how can you not look at the Golden State Warriors? Because eventually Klay Thompson's going to come back this season, maybe in December, maybe in January. But for the first time, we're going to see Curry, Green, and Thompson on the court for the first time in 2.5 years, which is insane. And that team is a 73-win team before Kevin Durant got there. Now, obviously, the team is a lot different now. Andrew Wiggins had a pretty good season last year, and now all the COVID questions are out of anyone's mind. Kevon Looney is a pretty decent player. Jordan Poole and Juan Toscano-Anderson, who was a very underrated player last year and got a lot of minutes, they're back. And then you have I almost call James Wiseman a rookie because he didn't really play a lot in season number 1.
No, it's valid.
You'll have him kind of leading. He'll play a few minutes. You have Jonathan Kuminga, who doesn't play a lot of things well, but he can score. And I think Moses Moody was a very underrated lottery pick. So you have 3 lottery picks kind of joining this NBA Finals core. And I think this is the time to see, can this team get themselves back to the upper echelon of the West? And if not make a finals run, at least make a conference finals run. This team finished 15-5 last year. They could have easily beaten the Lakers in that very, very classic 7-8 play-in game. Did eventually lose to the Memphis Grizzlies in the second play-in game, but the Golden State Warriors are a real possible team. I am excited to see what this team does this season. And if this team is going to do exactly what I think they're going to do, again, they just might be a really, really good surprise as the year goes on.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to try this. We're about to go into our hockey segment. This is the real hockey song for everybody out there. Not this damn commercial. Hold on. So,
Do you need a drum roll?
no, I'm trying here. This is the true hockey anthem. The CBC Hockey Night in Canada song. The classic. I know we were all talking about the ESPN theme last week, but this is the theme that I love. And I'll tell you.
And look, as long as we're not taking down off YouTube for copyright infringement, I'm all in.
I'm telling you right now, it's between that and Round Ball Rock for my favorite theme of all time, but I couldn't get the rights away from Fox. We don't have the money for that. All right. Promise to play that theme. Let's move on to the locals in the NHL. Only one local made the playoffs last season, and they were just one Game 7 away from a Stanley Cup Finals berth. The team in reference are the New York Islanders, as they lost 1-0 to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who eventually held up Lord Stanley's chalice. Now this team is looking to finally get to that next step, and they'll do it in a brand new stadium in good old Elmont at the UBS Arena. So we're going to take a look for all three locals at a forward and defenseman and the goalie situation. Jay, you know what they say, defense wins championships, but offense sells tickets. Play a good offensive player for me, please.
The forward I'm watching is Anders Lee. I mean, there's no doubt that the Isles missed their captain over the back half of last season and into the playoffs. And they're ecstatic to have him back, and not just because you can pretty much lock him into another 20-goal season. He's had 5 in his career. We all know that the media gave Barry Trotz plenty of grief for basically replacing Lee with Uncle Leo Komarov. But Trotz realistically didn't have a lot of options. I mean, you really can't replace your best goal scorer, your leader, and one of the more imposing players you can put out on the ice. Give Trotz and the Isles credit for mixing and matching their way to, as Rabbi said, 1 game away from the Stanley Cup Finals. But you also have to wonder, guys, how different that series against Tampa Bay would have gone with Anders Lee out there. He's done his usual job of posting up in front of the net and has shown that his ability to score from there is still intact. And getting back that dynamic piece of the Islanders offense can only help, as will the leadership and other intangibles that he brings, especially with the Islanders losing Jordan Eberle in the expansion draft. Lee, Matthew Barzal, and either Oliver Wahlstrom or Kyle Palmieri as the Isles' number 1 line could be a force to be reckoned with. Before he got hurt, Lee was Barzal's main trigger man and was really good at finding space to get good scoring chances. He was second to Toronto's Austin Matthews in terms of shots off high danger passes, and he often connected on those with Barzal. Look, Lee returning to form and picking up where he left off, paired with Barzal in the number 1 line, and the two of them incorporating either Wahlstrom or Palmieri will go a long way towards the Islanders having another chance to win the division.
Okay, so Anthony, I said defense wins championships, so let's actually talk about the defense now. What defenseman are you looking at in 2021-22?
Well, believe it or not, I'm looking at Zdeno Chara, one of the free agent pickups. And can you believe that Zdeno Chara is going back to the team he started with 24 years ago, okay? Yeah, I was in junior high school when he was coming up with the Islanders organization, all right? From 1997 to 2001, he played 231 games in an Islanders uniform. Obviously, was traded after the 2001 season as the Islanders was kind of going through a transition from top to bottom in the organization. And then you think about this: he had not played in the postseason in his 4 seasons with the Islanders since he was traded away 19 years away from the team. He has only missed the playoffs 3 times. Obviously, Chara, at this point in his career, 44 years old, is still in great shape, should be able to help out the Islanders' defensive depth on the 3rd or 4th line, perhaps. But also, he's a professional. I mean, you bring a professionalism, experience, a guy who's been there, who's been to the Stanley Cup Finals, who's won the Stanley Cup. Those are intangibles that you don't really get to see on paper. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of guy that Barry Trotz loved to have in the locker room. A guy who's not only is the biggest guy in the league for obvious reasons. I still don't understand to this day why people who challenge him to a fight. It's not going to work out for the opposing player. But when you have guys like that, you think about the Islanders had an issue a couple years ago, even last year, with their defensemen, to bring in somebody like Chara who can probably pass on some tutelage to some of the players on the team. Those are things that are very, very much welcome on a team that literally was one game away from from getting to the Stanley Cup final. It's just now, how you figure out to beat the Lightning, which has really been the only thing Barry Trotz has not been able to do the last few years. He's done everything correct. He pushed the right buttons. Maybe bringing in a guy who can tell them, keep in mind that the Boston Bruins were a team that couldn't quite get over the hump themselves. And then 2011 came around, and Coach Chara, being the team captain through his entire duration, has a member of the Boston Bruins. Solely lends a lot to his experience and is veteran savvy that can really be a big use. Besides being on the ice, maybe gives him 40, 44 games at most, perhaps. But I think he'll be a good addition, just as far as just being a locker room leader. I mean, I think that's one of the things that Barry Trotz welcomes for a team that right now is a popular pick to come out of the Eastern Conference.
They're a popular pick to come out of the Eastern Conference. But one of the biggest problems with having that new stadium is they have to start on the road for 13 games.
Oh yeah,
and their first 2 games have been disastrous, to say the least. They are 0-2, and they are 0-2 in a bad way. Okay. Simon Varlamov is still the goalie of this team. They actually kept the goalie for 2 consecutive years. What a concept. And he was 5th last year for the Vezina Trophy. Should have been a finalist, in my opinion. He had some soreness in the beginning of the season, so he has not played in the 2 games so far. He's 33 years old, though. Not necessarily going to eventually be the answer long-term for this team. And I think this team is definitely looking at the long-term, although they're ready right now. You do have to think with the new arena, you need to build something for the future. So one of the best parts is they had Elias Sarokin last year. Started the season off slow. I think he lost his first 3 games. But he actually started 0-2-1 with an 8.71 save percentage. This year, he has a 4.8 goals against average because Sorokin has had to play the first 2 games. The only person worse, by the way, is the goalie he'll be playing tomorrow night, Marc-Andre Fleury, who's had a 5.42 goals against average and had a horrible start to his year. But over the final 19, Sorokin went 13-4-2, 9.27 save percentage, 3 shutouts. That's going to help because the Islanders' defense so far has been tremendously porous, and even though they did again play a 1-0 game in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup's semifinals last year, it's not necessarily going to be this team's hallmark. I think this team again is a team that does a little bit of everything well, but they're not necessarily great. The great part of them is their coaching, and that's one thing that's going to be a big thing. They don't depend on their goalie all the time. They depend on making sure the goalie doesn't get shots at him. So that's going to be a big thing for the Islanders this season. I think it's crazy that everybody on the Athletic has picked them to win the division. I think there's teams I think Washington is still built pretty good. I think another team is still built pretty good, and we'll get to that when we get to our finals predictions in just a little while. But the Islanders, they're ready to go. And I think the one thing that's going to help them is to get some good solid goaltending performance, kind of like what you're seeing right now across the pond, especially over the last 2 games, including tonight. Speaking of the other side of the puck, the Rangers took a teeny step back last year, but after getting destroyed physically, noted hockey connoisseur and analytics guru James Dolan decided it was time to make a change. David Quinn out, Gerard Gallant in. Same 3 questions, starting with the offense. And Shay, give me a forward to look at.
All right, the forward I'm watching is Mika Zibanejad. Re-signing the forward who centers your number 1 line and led the team with 24 goals, put up 26 assists, and had 50 points, which were second on the team behind Artemi Panarin. He also led the team with 10 power play goals and 7 game winners. Was the big offseason to do for the Rangers, and the Blue Shirts got it done as GM Chris Drury locked up Zibanejad for 8 more years on a contract worth $8.5 million per year, starting in his age 29 season. Granted, he struggled to score early on last season, and he was flat out awful at 5-on-5. through the first 2 months of the season. He had just 6 points in 19 games. He had a horrific 42% expected goals rate with an even worse 37% actual goals rate. That 42% EGR was a full 5 percentage points worse than the next worst Ranger. That's how bad his first half was going. No doubt contracting COVID during camp affected his play and was most likely a major factor in his slow start. But when March rolled around, Zibanejad found his game. Over the final 37 games, he had 22 goals and 44 points. That's a 49-goal, 98-point over 82 per game pace, both of which were among the league's best. Only Austin Matthews, there's that guy again, scored more goals down the stretch, and he was tied for sixth in points. Obviously, a couple of 6-point games helped, but overall, Zibanejad was still much more consistent with his play as his expected goals rate jumped to 48% and his actual goals rate jumped to 56%. Both marks are fairly close to what he delivered in 2019-2020, which was the last full season. Who he gets paired with on the number one line will go a long way to helping the Rangers take the next step towards being contenders again in the Metropolitan Division. It seems like, at least to start, he'll have second-year pro Alexis Lafreniere on his left, though Barclay Goodrow got some time there on opening night, and Chris Kreider, the longest-tenured Ranger, on his right. Kreider has scored a goal in each of the Rangers' first 3 games right out of the gate. Zibanejad has 3 assists already, 2 at even strength and 1 on the power play, so he's off to a good start. He keeps that going. He lights the lamp 20-plus times this year, and the juice, as well as the dollars, will very much have been worth the squeeze for both the Rangers and Mika Zibanejad.
That team is a very good team. They won again tonight in Toronto with a goal by Panarin to win in overtime. So right now, the Rangers, you could say, are kings of Canada, and they are 2-1-1. Anthony, let's look at the defense.
Well, defensively, I want to look at the Norris Trophy winner from a year ago. That is Adam Fox. Now, keep in mind, he joined Bobby Orr as really the only other defensive player to win this award in his first 2 seasons, the first player to win it from a non-playoff team. So Adam Fox, building off a rookie season when he finished 4th for the Calder Trophy, he became David Quinn's most trusted defenseman last year. You think about this, whether it was the power play, whether it was killing off a penalty, Adam Fox was really key to being on the ice. He led all defensemen last season in assists with 42. This season already he has 3 points, a goal, 1 goal and an assist. There was one, obviously, he assisted on Mika Zibanejad's goal in Montreal Saturday night. Actually started that playoff with a great takeaway. But when you think of Adam Fox defensively, for a team that has struggled defensively in front of whoever was in that, whether it's Shuskin or Alexander Georgiev, Adam Fox being on the ice is very imperative. And late in the season, he tended to struggle as guys around him got injured. So Ryan Lindgren, for example, was one of the guys that went down and he allowed more ice time than anybody on that team, particularly when Tony DeAngelo was dismissed earlier in the season. Adam Fox defensively, he's obviously the Rangers' best player, not just for what he does in defensive play, but also he is a defensive player who's an offensive threat. Really, the first one that the Rangers had in quite a long time. I go back to Brian Leach, if I say so myself, a defenseman who is good defensively, but also a dual threat offensively as well. So Adam Fox, I mean, that's all he's really have drawn a line, set the table pretty high. But if he can continue his play and build on the last 2 years, the Rangers should be a much improved team on the defensive side of ice.
Yes, they absolutely should. By the way, one of the things that they have done this year already, and it was definitely mission 1 for this team in the offseason, they have out-hit basically every single one of their opponents to start the season. They out-hit Toronto 33-19 tonight, having Ryan Reeves on the team after suffering a possible injury early in preseason against the Devils. They got him back, and Reeves has definitely provided a spark defensively. Barclay Goodrow is a freaking beast on the ice at times, and he can score too. by the way. So that team is a lot better in that sense of the word. Goalie, they don't have a problem with, at least with Igor Shesterkin. He is still only 25 years old. He is definitely the Henrik Lundqvist in the future, and not by the fact that he'll be wearing nice suits on MSG in pre-games. Good God, that man knows how to wear a suit. But he only had 23 to 26 shots. He did not start the back-to-back games. Alexander Gorgiev actually started the opener in Washington, and just like he was last year, he was terrible. It was 8-7-2 last year with a 2.71 goals against average, but Gorgiev was definitely not at that level when he was backing up Henrik Lundqvist for so many years, to the point where he could easily spell Lundqvist at any given point and was doing almost the best Henrik Lundqvist impersonation. And he did the same thing with Shesterkin, especially around playoff time when they made that late run in 2019, 2020. But Shesterkin then 31 saves in Montreal, 40 saves tonight, the 8th time in his career that does it. He had Rangers round shot 18-2 in that second period, and Gorgiev stopped all 18 shots. So the team is going to go as far as Shesterkin takes them. I know Anthony was talking about how the Rangers defense needs to improve, but we know that defense isn't going to go from 0 to 100 in a minute. They're going to need good play from their goalie, and sometimes they're going to need standing on head play from their goalie, and I think Shesterkin can provide that. They're not going to start Shesterkin in back-to-backs. Gallant has already said, basically, that's not something he does. So Gorgiev is also going to have to step up as well. He's going to need to not have the 5-goal performance that he had led up against Washington on opening night. He's going to need to, again, provide admirable backup duty. In the goalie land these days, you need 2 goalies to get you through an entire season. You're not going to be able to do it on one goalie alone. And if that's the case, the Rangers might have 1.5 goalies right now, and that's not going to cut it. Now, here's a funny fact. The Rangers have played 4 games so far. 4 games. The Devils will play their second tomorrow night. So the undefeated 1-0 Devils were once the model of consistency in the NHL in the 2000s. But if they don't win a playoff series this year, they will not have won one in a decade. There are few teams as exciting as the Devils. Jay, you know what to do. Let's talk about the offense.
All right. The forward I'm watching is Jack Hughes, and that's got to be no surprise to anyone who follows the Devils. They have a young core of forwards whom they are hoping will take, the next leap in their development this season. And it starts with their third-year center, Jack Hughes, the 2019 number 1 overall draft pick, who already has 2 goals out of the gate after putting up 11 last year to go with 20 assists. That's a 45-point pace over 82 games. Hughes' 53% expected goals rate last season led the team's forwards, and he was one of 6 players to earn 50% or more of the actual goals. That, plus his ability to carry the puck into the offensive zone, is what you're looking for from the guy who centers your number 1 line. With Yegor Sharangovich, who has 30-goal potential written all over him on one side, and Thomas Tatar, who has 6 20-goal seasons in his 11 years in the NHL on the other, Hughes is primed for a big season. He is a lot of people's breakout player this year for the entire NHL. Look, we all know the Devils are more likely to be fighting for the number 1 pick in the 2022 NHL draft and for a playoff spot this season. But if the youngsters on this team, starting with Hughes, take the next step forward in the development, then, we can start to think that maybe brighter days might be ahead on the other side of the George Washington Bridge.
On the other side of the George Washington Bridge, Anthony is standing on that side. And Anthony, teach me how to Dougie.
Well, you know what? There was one good way to start the debut on your new team, and that score a goal in 17 seconds into your first game, has Dougie Hamilton managed to do with the New Jersey Devils. Look, he was the top defensive free agent, signed with the Devils for a $63 million deal over 7 years, $9 million average annual value. Now, obviously, a Devils team that has really gone through a youth movement the last several years, opening up the wallet a little bit to spend was kind of out of the blue for the Devils. But you look at top defense, 10 goals, 42 points last season for the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously got to the second round of the playoffs. He has a size, defensive game, and the offensive numbers to obviously be on the top line of any team. And you look at the Devils a year ago, they relied on a lot of young players and was not good defensively. So you got a guy who can help out defensively, but also generate a lot of offense, which obviously we saw 17 seconds into his debut, he has managed to do. With the Devils, it's going to be interesting, though, is how the Devils rotate the defensemen, because you still have PK Subban there. He's still for at least one more year on his current deal. So it's going, and he's normally have been on that top line. So, you know, they should drop down to the number 2, number 3. He's getting up there a little bit in age. It should be interesting to see how the Devils rotate the defensive pairing.
Yeah. Anthony might have froze on me there, but
Ant, you good?
yeah, I think Anthony did freeze on me there. Okay, so Anthony, while we get to you immediately afterwards, let's talk about the goalie situation very quickly. Let's talk about the goalie situation really quickly. And Mackenzie Blackwood, who still hasn't actually played yet for 2 reasons. One, he didn't play through most of the preseason because of vaccination issues, that he wasn't actually vaccinated until October. But he also has a bruised heel, so he didn't actually play in the 1 game that the Devils have currently played. That went to Jonathan Bernier, who did a decent job and actually won their first game of the season against Chicago in a 3-2 overtime game. But they also let up 2 goals pretty much late in that game when Chicago had the 5-on-4, 5-on-3 advantage. Blackwood is a very young player. Again, he is the future of this franchise. He's still probably on the low end of goalies, you would think, in the NHL. He's still a guy who you can try to build a team around of. He had a .906 save percentage last year. He is a 2nd round pick of this team, but he is someone to go in the right direction for this team in the future. And I think that's a good, having an experienced career backup goalie like Bernier will help out. But I think Blackwood, once he gets back healthy, will be a decent netminder for this team and a guy who can get this team on sort of the right track. And it's a tough division. Let's just say that straight up. I don't expect them to be better than, they're probably last in this division. I'll be honest with you. The only team that I think that they're probably better than is the Sabres, who have a lot of issues on their own end, with Jack Eichel probably never playing a game for this team ever again. But the Devils, it's all about taking steps forward. Nobody expects this team to make the playoffs this year. Nobody expects this team to even compete for a wild card this year. But if they do, especially with Lindy Ruff at the helm, who has made winners in almost every place that he's gone to, even though he hasn't made the playoffs since with Dallas in 2016, I think the Devils could be on the right track. We'll see. It's a very interesting situation with this ball club. All right, guys. Tampa Bay and Montreal was your Stanley Cup final matchup last year. What? In a truncated season and a different playoff format. Now we're back to normal. Sorry, Anthony. No sponsorships for divisions this year. It's back. It's back to the form divisions, unsponsored, normal travel.
So no Capital One, Atlantic Division, no
Capital One, no Scotiabank. No Tim Hortons Canadian division, sorry. Normal travel, normal matchups, and we'll never, ever have to say the phrase, the Montreal Canadiens won the Western Conference ever again, thank God. Jay, give me one NHL team, just one, to watch in 21-22.
I mean, for me, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, come on, the NHL hasn't had a dynasty since the Red Wings owned the league in the mid to late 90s and the early aughts. From 95 to 02, they went to 4 Stanley Cup finals, winning 3. They had 4 conference titles, 5 first-place finishes, and 6 seasons out of 8 with a points percentage over 600. The NHL both loves and loathes its dynasties, the Canadiens, the Oilers, the Islanders. That's why the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champs are such an intriguing team this season. Can they do it again and make it 3 in a row? I take their top 2 lines and their top 2 defensive pairs over anyone in the NHL. Yeah, 2019 MVP Nikita Kucherov going down this week hurts, but this team lost Steven Stamkos until the Cup Finals 2 years ago and still took home Lord Stanley's chalice. Same with Kucherov this past season. The NHL is notoriously vague with injuries, but the way Kucherov hobbled off the ice has folks thinking it might be a groin issue. But, Kucherov played with a cracked rib during this past season's Cup final, so don't count him out. And as Coach Jon Cooper said, it is not the time to hit the panic button. But I can't see any of this stopping this team. They can play any kind of game, shootouts or close ones. They can beat you 5-on-5 or with special teams, and we all know how good Andrei Vasilevsky is between the pipes. They still have Andre Palat, Braden Point, Alex Killorn and Stamkos up front, Ryan McDonough, Victor Hedman, and Mikhail Sergachev, leading the blue line. So there's plenty of talent, not only to survive Kucherov being unavailable, but for a little while, but rack up wins while they wait for him to get back. Do they need more depth all over the place? Yes. Is their checking line a little suspect? Maybe. Is the backup goalie situation ideal? No. But all of that, plus everything else I noted, is why Tampa Bay is my intriguing team to watch in the NHL this season.
And a lot of people Stanley Cup champion, whatever. That is what it is. Anthony released the Kraken.
Yeah. Yeah, I get the new kids on the block. Seemingly every time the NHL have an expansion team, I get the new kid on the block. I talked about the Golden Knights a couple of years ago and actually went to the first home game. This year I get to watch them host the Seattle Kraken. Now they're not in a strong division, so they're pretty much a wild card as far as that Pacific Division outside of Vegas is kind of a crapshoot. But the key is that the strength is going to be defense and goaltending. Philip Grubauer, who won 30 games for Colorado, is brought over in the expansion draft. Chris Driedger is his backup. But then you look at the defensemen, Giordano, Otsl, Vince Dunn, and Al Lawson. They got great defense. The question is going to be, can they score enough goals? And they have guys who have scored double-digit goals, but no more than maybe 18 at most. So generating offense is going to be key for the Kraken if they want to try to make some kind of hay in the full season. Now the Golden Knights have kind of set a bar that's a little high, a little unfair. They got to the Stanley Cup final in the very first year of existence. That's just unheard of in sports. But the Kraken, I think they can at least push for a wild card. Considering when you look at the rest of that Pacific Division and teams kind of on a downturn. By the way, would anybody know what the hell is going on in San Jose? Wasn't that a team literally went into the Stanley Cup Finals 5 minutes ago and just have fallen off the map?
All 3 LA teams are freaking terrible, which is one of the reasons why the Kraken can win in this division.
Yeah, but it's going to be also the first couple of months going to be key to kind of give what kind of identity this team is going to have moving forward. Because if they're going to score a lot of goals, they might as well be a tough defensive-minded team. And we saw opening night against Vegas, they can turn up the defense when given the opportunity. They came back from 3 goals down to a 3-1 deficit and tied the game up before they lost on a pretty controversial goal. It could make the argument that was a kick or whatnot. But Seattle, with the colors and a rabid fan base in Seattle, if you ever watched a Seattle Sounders game or a Seahawks game, they're going to feel right at home. I'm interested to see how this team turns out in year 1.
Not sure if they can break into the Vegas, Edmonton, Calgary top 3 group, or even if you want to put Vancouver in there, who can kind of make some hay after their run 2 years ago. But yeah, this team is easily a team that could finish 4th place in that division, and they'll be in the room for a wild card, and they can easily even get to 3rd, which would make Ron Francis's GM job very easy and get them a wild card spot. Yeah. Also, just remember, the Vegas Golden Knights have not only made the Stanley Cup in year 1, they made the conference finals in year 3 and year 4. So that is some of the most unfair standards to an organization that you could ever see.
Truth.
So while Vegas has made it 3 out of 4 years to the conference finals, the Colorado Avalanche, who were the President's Cup trophy winners last year. And Jay, you know what happens to the President Cup trophy winners in the playoffs.
Early out.
That is correct. They were out in the second round last year. But when you have Nathan McKinnon, you have Mikko Rantanen, and you have McKinnon. McKinnon is the most, probably outside of anybody from Edmonton, is the most talented player in the NHL. They did lose a couple of people to the Seattle Kraken and Eunice Driscoll, and we'll talk about the goalie in a second. And they lost Brandon Saad to a 5-year contract to the St. Louis Blues in July. Their scoring depth is going to be a little bit of an issue. McKinnon actually started the year. I think he's back now from a COVID scare, so he didn't get to play opening night in their demolishing of Chicago. But you'll have Tyson Jost, JT Compher, and Valerie Nishishkin, who offset the loss of Donskoy. However, Anthony mentioned Philip Grubauer signing a 6-year contract with Seattle, but Colorado made one of the best moves of the offseason to immediately scramble. They had to include one of their best young talents in there, but they got Darcy Kemper from the Arizona Coyotes. Kemper has had one of the best goals against average in the entire NHL. He missed 10 weeks with a lower body injury in 2019-20, but when healthy, he's been one of the best goalies in the NHL over the last 3 seasons, since 2018-2019. Among goalies who have played at least 100 games, he is second in the NHL with a 2.35 goals against average, and he's tied with Andrei Vasilevsky, by the way. Robin Lerner is next on the list, the 923 save percentage as well. So he's 31 years old. He is in the final season of a contract extension. The Colorado Avalanche have everything going for them. They have the organizational talent, but like a lot of teams out there, we've seen it. We saw it with the Lightning until they broke through 2 years ago in the bubble. We saw it with Boston. We've seen it with a lot of teams. The playoffs have been their bugaboo. Maybe this time that's not going to happen. All right. So I would stop the show here, but we have no choice. I said we were going to make predictions, and we're going to make predictions. We'll start with the NHL. By the way, if you take these predictions and go to Vegas with them, you're an idiot. I'm just saying, at least if you listen to me. If you listen to these two have been pretty good with what they've had so far. So listen to them. I'll come up with the Captain Not Obvious pick. All right. Let's talk about who might hoist Lord Stanley's chalice. That's 3 mentions during the show. Let's mention. So all I want you is to tell me who's winning the East, who's winning the West of the NHL.
I'm gonna go first, Dan. So I'm gonna make this real easy because the 2 teams I'm picking have already been discussed. So this will be real quick, and then I will cede my time to my esteemed colleague in Brooklyn. I'm going with Tampa Bay coming out of the East for all of the reasons I noted in the previous segment. And as the rabbi noted, teams that win the President's Trophy have a tendency to go out early the year they win it. But that usually seems to be enough incentive for them, especially if they return most of their talent or make upgrades to take the next step the following year. And, so with that in mind, I'm going to take your Colorado Avalanche, Rabbi, for all the reasons you noted in the prior segment. Tampa Bay, Colorado, why not?
That's a great analysis when you finish up with Tampa Bay, Colorado. Why not, Anthony?
You know what? I was going back and forth out of the East, but I think Barry Trotz finally get the Islanders over the hump, and I know my niece is gonna be happy for this one, but she will get a chance to go see a couple of games Stanley Cup final in the new arena. I think the Islanders will come out of the East, and out of the West, I'm going with Vegas. You know what? They've been knocking on the door for a couple of years now. They're obviously in the top echelon in the Western Conference. I think they get through the Western Conference. But second final is Islanders Golden Knights.
All right.
We're gonna all pick different teams in the East because I like the trajectory this team has gone on in the last few years. I think they're the best team in this division. Going with the Carolina Hurricanes. repping the Whalers stuff right here. Out of the East, I think they have the most talent. I think what Rob Brindamore has done with that team has been outstanding. And I think that team has all of the bunch of jerks, as we like to say out there. They have enough to get themselves over the next level. I've gone back and forth between Colorado and Vegas. I'm going to go with Jay and jump on the Colorado bandwagon, just as I mentioned. They have the most talent out of anybody out there. I like the moves that they've made. I do worry about their depth in a little bit of spots, but I don't like completely losing the Vegas Golden Knights losing Reeves. I think they've lost a little bit of their heart on that team. I know they still have Marchessault, but I kind of think that's going to be the matchup. So I'm going to go with Carolina and Colorado as my Stanley Cup Finals teams. All right, let's talk about the NBA. Are we going to go chalk and go Nets Lakers? I hope to God you guys don't, but if you do, fine. Well, I'll yell at you in a second. This is going to be fun. Give us our NBA Finals predictions. Once again, starting with Jay.
In the East, I'm going with Milwaukee. The Bucks do have to worry about championship hangover. It is a real thing, fellas. But with the Nets' big three, now a big two for the foreseeable future, the Sixers residing firmly in who-knowsville, and the rest of the East very much TBD. I still think the East goes through Milwaukee and the Greek Freak and his gold medal winning running mates, Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, who are going to be dealing with a very short off season after the Olympics. We'll see how that affects their play. They've also got some pretty good role players. You're looking like Brook Lopez, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, who's shown in the playoffs. Losing PJ Tucker.
I have to give you it's Pat Connaughton.
I keep pronouncing it wrong.
You need to go to me for pronunciations before the show. Jesus.
It's his pet peeve, guys. I'll let him have it.
Yes!
Losing PJ Tucker may ding the D a little bit, but he gave them very little on O. So adding Grayson Allen, who's a 39% shooter from three and 87% from the line, and bringing back old friend George Hill may offset that. They open the season against the Nets. Could it be an Eastern Conference Finals preview? I think so, and I think Milwaukee has enough to get past them. And this time it won't come down to the size of KD's sneaker. In the West, it took me right up until showtime to make this pick, but I'm going with Utah. That's about how wide open I think the West is. The Jazz on paper seem to have all the pieces needed to come out of this conference. Two-guard Donovan Mitchell is a big-time scorer. Career high 26.4 points per game during the regular season. He cranked that up to 32.3 in the playoffs. Mike Conley runs the point, and his 16.2 points per game and 6 flat assists per game is the perfect complement to his backcourt mate. Joe Ingles at 45.1 and Bojan Bogdanovic at 39% are legit snipers from downtown. Rudy Gobert is the reigning defensive player of the year and the NBA leader in rebounds at 13.5 per game and block shots at 2.7 per game. Jordan Clarkson and his 18.4 points per game were worthy of the Sixth Man of the Year award. The team led the NBA in three-point attempt rate and were fourth in accuracy at 38.9. They were third in offensive rebound rate, led the NBA in two-point shooting defense, and gave up fewer threes than all but 3 teams. They drafted Jared Butler, who helped lead Baylor to the national title. And if he clears medical, I think he's a rotation guy from day one. They brought in veteran forward Rudy Gay to add some versatility, and veteran big man Hassan Whiteside to help Gobert with the boards and interior defense. They also have one of the better coaches in the NBA in Quinn Snyder. Like I said, the Jazz have all the pieces on paper. But right now, that's all I've got. So that's what I'm going with.
By the way, I love the Jazz pick. After what they did defensively, after what the Clippers did defensively to Rudy Gobert, especially in that game 6, I don't know. But by the way, Clarkson and Joe Ingles, 1 and 2 in the Sixth Man of the Year. So you talk about anything that's deep. That's a deep team. Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
For me, in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to go with Milwaukee. You know what? I know I talk glowingly about James Harden and the Nets' score, but like I said, you can't outscore everybody in the playoffs, and that's found out the hard way last year. But I still think Milwaukee, it depends. Like I said, short off season for the defending champs, even shorter one for Holiday and Chris Middleton to see how that catches up to him along. We saw what happened to the 2 NBA finalists from a year ago, and the short off season eventually catch up to him with all the injuries. So Milwaukee, I think if they can stay healthy and stay the course, I think they definitely come out of the Eastern Conference. In the West, I know a lot of people are laughing at the roster moves, but I'm going to go with the Lakers. And the key is going to be Anthony Davis. I know all the talk is going to be about Russell Westbrook and how he fits in with LeBron and how they run the offense and some of the dirty dogs, the old men they have on the bench. You know, they come out Anthony's, the White Howards, who seem to be like, just for whatever reason, just can't leave Los Angeles and stay away for more than 12 months at a time. But Anthony Davis, if he can stay healthy, you think about his injury and how that literally changed the course of that first-round series against Phoenix. Remember, the Lakers was up 2-1 and actually leading Game 4 when Anthony Davis went down with the groin injury and pretty much was done for the rest of the series. He tried to give it a go in Game 6, and Phoenix went at him right away, smartly, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But Anthony Davis, if he can play through, if he can stay healthy like he was a couple years ago when the Lakers win that championship run, including winning the title in the bubble, then obviously it makes the Lakers one of the top teams in the Western Conference if he can stay on the court. LeBron James, you know what? Year 19, it's just not much you can say about LeBron at this point. What he can't do. And really last year was the first time he really suffered from any kind of significant injury in his career outside of a couple of years ago when he had the groin injury. So he's getting up there in age. I think Frank Vogel is going to do a better job of load management. There's more games, longer season, but more important for the Lakers, a longer offseason for LeBron and Anthony Davis to heal their injuries. I think they come out of the Western Conference. So my finals matchup is going to be Lakers Bucks. You're going to see LeBron against Giannis, and obviously for the folks at the NBA and ABC, that'll be a great ratings booster. Even though Bucks Suns was no snoozer last year, that was a compelling series.
Yeah, good series.
That I think a lot of people really kind of underestimated as far as how competitive those 6 games were.
By the way, that's cute that you think Frank Vogel is going to be able to control LeBron's load management. That's cute that you think LeBron actually believes in load management. One of the biggest people against load management in the entire history of the NBA, at least now, is LeBron James. He would rather play hard for 73 games than being able to play hard for 55. Okay. You guys are correct. There is going to be a repeat conference champion. It's just not in the East. I actually have the Phoenix Suns going in again in the West. I think, I always think to myself, I think, by the way, the core of this team is still there. Nothing has changed. They just signed Mikal Bridges to a long-term extension. DeAndre Ayton is now playing for a contract. And if he makes that leap that he did in the playoffs last year, I know Anthony, even when he was playing Anthony Davis, he looked outstanding. So if DeAndre Ayton can take that next step, and if Monty Williams can, give enough plays like they did in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals all of the time, I think this team is going to be good. And I think Devin Booker is going to turn himself into a top 5 player in basketball. And I think that core, that outside young core, is going to be really good. The only trepidation that I had with that pick is me thinking, well, Chris Paul is going to be 37. He can't do this again. And then I think this every year with Chris Paul now. And this man is also finding the Tom Brady fountain of youth, and he is making his play better as everything goes on. I think this situation, first of all, I know they're going to be tired. I know they're going to be exhausted from the last season, but I think the motivation of losing that series up 2-0 is going to make them really feel like they're going to need to do some stuff this year. I think that, by the way, the West is going to be a bloodbath. Nobody is going to win more than 55 games this season in the Western Conference. The Lakers are not a 60-win team. The Jazz are not a 60-win team. The Mavs are not a 60-win team. The Suns are not a 60-win team. But I trust that core in the playoffs. Okay. I changed my East pick pretty much as you two were talking. You two have convinced me to go with the Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference. You know what? let's not overthink it. I think Kyrie Irving means something to this team, but remember, this team almost won an NBA title. And I will say this, if they had beaten the Bucks, they would have won the NBA title, in my opinion, without Irving on the floor and half a James Harden. I think Kevin Durant is an MVP candidate every single time he is 100% healthy. And I have no reason right now to think that he's not 100% healthy. I think this team is one of the deepest teams in the NBA. Just think that Lakers season of 2019, 2020, where they just got everybody on that team. The Nets now have everybody on this team. They even got LaMarcus Aldridge out of retirement. They have Blake. They have people who all of a sudden look like superstars when you're playing with KD and James Harden. Now that team will have load management, and that will help out a ton this season. Again, remember, they're big three. And again, I have stated I think Kyrie Irving will come back. But although I don't think that might be the greatest thing for the Nets if that happens, I think the Nets have so much talent right now. And I actually have the Milwaukee Bucks finishing with a better record than the Nets during the regular season, because the Nets treat the regular season like they do the regular season. But I think the Nets will be more healthy going into this postseason. And I think those expectations will be warranted. So I'm going to go Nets Suns as my NBA championship finisher. So that's my final.
Two teams wearing black. Two teams wearing all black. That should be fun.
Yes, I can't wait for that NBA finals. It'll look like.
Speaking of teams that wear black.
Well, thank you for that segue. I appreciate it. Why don't you do my writing? Very quickly, let's talk about the Jon Gruden situation. About a week ago today, Jon Gruden was fired. There was originally emails that were sent internally that were unearthed, and in true Raider fashion, not for their investigation, but for the investigation of the Washington football team. It started out with a racial slur about DeMaurice Smith, and then it got worse, and then it basically offended everybody. And then by Monday night at 10 o'clock, Jon Gruden was no longer the coach of the Oakland Raiders. He either resigned or got fired. I'm kind of thinking the latter, but it doesn't matter. Guys, what are your thoughts on this clusterfuck? And by the way, the Raiders won yesterday. They even made sure that they were really not winning one for the Gipper at all in this situation.
Well, I'm going to fact check the rabbi twice here. Once, I know, we all want to believe that they're still the Oakland Raiders, but they do play in Las Vegas these days.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. That's a bad fact.
And two, as much as we keep wanting it to be that Mark Davis fired Gruden, he actually didn't. Gruden actually resigned.
That's what he says happened. I'm not 100% sure if there was pressure in this situation.
Here's the thing. I mean, I have a feeling that because Mark Davis just loves and worships Jon Gruden from the moment that his dad passed away and Mark took the reins of the franchise. He had one goal, and that was to have Jon Gruden back on the sidelines coaching his team. So I think he probably had a conversation that went along the lines of, I can let you go out, with your dignity intact by resigning, or I can make this really bad and have to fire you. And Gruden probably decided, the lesser of two evils was him resigning. I saw the news get broke on Monday Night Football right before halftime. Adam Schefter broke in and released it, and I hunted down, the breaking news alerts, and I sent them to you guys. And I think you all we were all watching Monday Night Football, so we kind of were aware of this. I can't honestly say I'm surprised. Jon Gruden has always been one of the most arrogant people in the NFL, whether he was on the sidelines with the Raiders or the Buccaneers or in the Monday Night Football booth. Does it surprise me the length and breadth of what was uncovered about the way he actually feels about these, the things that were brought up about, DeMaurice Smith, about Roger Goodell, and I won't use the phrase that he used to describe the commissioner of the NFL. the way he feels about LGBTQ people, the way he feels about women in general, let alone in front office positions. I mean, hell, this jackass was trading lewd pictures of the Washington football team cheerleaders with Bruce Allen. The thing after reading up on, the stories that came out the next day, the thing that has stood out for me is who leaked these. I mean, only one to the Wall Street Journal, but then the entire exploding volcano of them to the New York Times. There was no doubt the Times was going to, throw that all out for the world to see. What I want to know, and I don't think we'll ever find out who actually released these to the Times. My gut instinct is it's somebody inside the Washington football team who is just fed up with the toxic atmosphere that has been so pervasive under Dan Snyder's rule, and why Dan Snyder has not been removed as owner of this franchise is beyond me. I mean, hell, there's precedent for it. They took Jerry Richardson out of, away from Charlotte. But here's the thing about Gruden. What was interesting to me is that, you had Mike Tirico talking about, he talked about how he had never felt like this while he and Gruden were partners. So he was surprised. You had Tim Brown, who played for Gruden on the Raiders and is one of, loves Gruden. And so these guys, and this was before the Times story broke, and Gruden trying to play that off as, he wasn't caricaturizing Smith as, in racial terms. He just always uses the, liars having big lips thing. If that wasn't a red flag, I don't know what is. And who knows, maybe that comment by Gruden is what prompted whoever released the rest of the emails to the Times to release them. Here's the thing, though, is that Gruden is not the only guy who thinks that way. I have mentioned on more than one occasion on this show the old white men who run the NFL. And there's way too many of them, and they all think the way Gruden does. And if the NFL really wants to be the change that they claim they're going to be in terms of the diversity of hiring women, hiring people of color, then I'm sorry, people like Gruden cannot be a part of the NFL. I think he's burned his last bridge. I think he's gotten to the point where he's too toxic for anyone else to touch him. Other than Davis, he really didn't have any other coaching options, though the Raiders may have been the only one he would have ever entertained. If he's become that toxic that he's no longer, that he's, he'll never set foot in anywhere around the NFL in any capacity, I think the NFL is better off that way. I just hope that I'm waiting for Beth Wilkinson's report to finally come out, and why the NFL is holding back on it out of how sensitive it is. I'm sorry. To me, that means you're covering up something you don't want to let out there. Gruden's gone. The NFL is better off for it. Dan Snyder needs to be next.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%, Jay. And you think about this now. How you talk about Jon Gruden's arrogance? How about his entitlement? Last Sunday after the game,
they go hand in hand.
He basically gone and said, "Oh, I don't want to talk. No, I'm not going to discuss it again." And it's like, hey, look, you just made a racial slur, and then you criticize commissioner. You should explain yourself. And then the more stuff came out, and then obviously Jon Gruden was fired, resigned, whatever, he was removed as head coach. But it presents a greater problem that the NFL really has to address, and that is, Gruden's not alone. There are a lot of people that are in the front offices that are in the NFL office, on Fifth on Park Avenue, in Manhattan. There are a lot of top to bottom. There are individuals who have this mentality and this kind of thinking. And if you're gonna be the embrace change mantra that you were preaching about outside of sporting apparel and wearing different rainbow colors, then stuff like this has no spot, no spot in the league whatsoever, in sports whatsoever, and in society in general. I mean, there's no place for stuff like this. And you know what? And Jon Gruden, good riddance. But also it brings to light what's going on with the Washington football team, who, by the way, found a way to even flub the whole Sean Taylor retirement ceremony, in which Rabbi, I see his reaction. It amazes me how this organization can continually mess up even the littlest things, even something that should have been taken care of a long time ago as far as retirement, Sean Taylor's jersey. You're bringing it up on a week where everything that's going on with the toxic environment of this organization comes to light. Like I said, it is pretty much opening up a can of worms to what is now what the league has to face head on, which is a bigger problem. What's going on in the NFL as far as front offices, as far as the work environment to some of these teams, and you know what, the league and even the player association really have to get together and kind of investigate and kind of see what is going on. If you really want to be the change that you preaching to be, you're gonna have to, peel back a couple of band-aids and really get to the source of the problem if you want it out of your sport once and for all.
Yeah, I will say this. I don't know who is now. First of all, on the Washington situation, that was a fucking PR stunt, and that is the worst way to do it. In this age of social media, what makes you think that you could do something like that on 4 days' notice and basically say, "Oh, we had this planned all along. We never really actually told anybody. We just bullshit." You know what? That organization should be ashamed of itself and should have great quarterbacks like Taylor Heineke going at that organization as a punishment to how wonderful citizens the Washington football team have been in so many years. I don't know what the old white men really think out there. I mean, obviously, Jerry Jones is one of the people who would be considered an old white man, but we don't know these things. There's no visual evidence. However, there are all of these emails out there. There are 550,000 emails out there, and the Players Association has said, release all of them so we know transparency, although the NFL has said, oh, well, Gruden's language is the only language that was worthy of this. Bullshit. Yeah. Complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. You're never going to get rid of this in the NFL. I've already admitted it. You have to start just getting rid of people. I think over time, we're going to see which Grudens. We're going to see who people have the same mindset as Gruden. We're in the age of social media. We're in the age of where everybody has an investigative license. It's going to happen, but it's going to take time. And unfortunately, we're going to have to be patient about it. But as long as there's social media, for all of the toxicity of social media, so I said toxicity eventually, there is stuff like this that allows us to see people for who they really are. Yeah. All right. For all of the things tonight, for the people who produced Twitter, for Kyrie Irving's Instagram, which I will never, ever, ever go on ever again. I actually listened to like 5 minutes.
For the wee man, by the way.
For the wee man
who's going to dedicate a strain to Kyrie at some point.
Yes. For CM Punk, who was mentioned during this show. For Jay's nickname, the Czar, and I swear to God, I've heard that beforehand.
Wow. You have another birthday, you get another nickname.
For Lord Stanley's Chalice, for hockey connoisseur James Dolan, and I said hockey analytics connoisseur James Dolan, for everything that was gone on tonight, and for Jon Gruden's racist ass. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and you've been watching another edition of On the Sports Lines. But for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, obviously, on the other side. I, of course, am the idiot who, again, picked a World Series of the Padres and Angels on our MLB preview. Yeah, that was me. I loaned it. We're live on Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand, where you can see this show or catch up on any ones that you may have missed, like that great Padres and Angels appearance prediction at YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines. We bashed the Red Sox, thinking that they had no chance this year, and they're going to probably make the World Series. And of course, you can find this link to the show and other bits of knowledge at ONTH Sports Lines. That's on Twitter. Till next Thursday, when we're all going to be in costume. Maybe not. No. Bueller. Thank you and have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.